Hi, welcome back to another TerranScapes video. This video is going to be finally another update in my GT building project. So there's a playlist that has these videos in it, and it's called the GT building project because I was going to build this elaborate centerpiece terrain item for the Unplugged Gamers GT, which is going to be coming up in April, I think, end of April. And I'm realizing I'm never going to have this done in time for a variety of reasons. So I'm going to be changing it to the Fortified Sorcerer's Study. And so that will be the title for these building updates as they go forward. And so why am I not getting it done in time? Well, I was thinking about when you make a defensive area and you have defensive buildings, right? Because this is the idea. If you've been following, right? I built this study and I had some additions I built onto it. And then I was talking about the next building, and it's going to be, you know, and there's a defensive area, and I haven't explained really any of these things in great detail yet. It occurred to me that why do these buildings not have actual artillery mounted on them or in them or whatever, right? When you think about, you know, towers that were built to protect harbors, right, in the age of cannons, right? They had cannons sticking out of them to, you know, shell boats and that sort of idea. And while this is in the Warhammer fantasy world, there's artillery all over the place. Cannons and volley guns and catapults and mortars and all, you know, rocket launchers, all sorts of stuff. So I got this idea that I would add some weaponry to the buildings. It seems crazy that there aren't any already as sort of the general design elements that people have been doing for Warhammer. So I got some pieces for artillery and I started making some molds of them, and I had some problems with those molds, and I tried again and I had problems, and then I made proper molds, and all of that took forever. And I've been distracted with other things, and so it got set by the wayside, and so it actually just ground to a halt, and I haven't hardly done anything on it in the last several weeks. So I'm showing you what I have done, which is some stuff, and I have learned quite a bit from it, and to give you a sense of where this project will be going, and if it takes me 3 years to complete, it takes me 3 years. If it takes me 10 years to complete, it takes me 10. Whatever. I'm not putting any pressure on myself. My mind jumps around to different things, and I've got another focus that I'm really focused on right now. That's awesome. And if that means this gets pushed to the wayside and gets worked on periodically, then that's okay. But I do want to show you what I did, because it actually involves a lot of mold making, and I think that there are some things that I want to show you that you might be able to learn from. So let's go over to the bench, and I'll show you what's been going on with these cannons and whatnot. I wanted to use this as, you know, really the starting place of how I jumped into this extra stuff that has made me go so far behind on this project, really, and stumped me. Is that I thought, wouldn't it be nice to have like a cannon coming out of each of these windows instead of the windows, right? Have like a cannon or a volley gun or a steam tank gun facing down, people trying to walk across the path that come into this building. So that was my motivation. And as I started looking at the other building that I have, I was like, ooh, that could accept some guns as well. And I thought, why not? Why don't people add stuff to the buildings back in this time period if they've got cannons lying around? So let's add some cannons. So I thought. So what I did, don't look at any of this stuff. I'm not going to push it all away here, but I went and I bought the current version of the Empire volley gun. And I also bought the current version of the Empire cannon. And then I got the steam tank gun that goes like on the turret. I don't know if you know the steam tank. And I made a mold of them. So what I did is I made the spout to make a pour spout, mounted it to the side of the box. This would be the mold box, right? I made a box for it. Then I had it floating, basically, if you can picture it, right? It's floating in the box, right? So there's gaps below and beneath it. And I poured Venomold to fill up to about the midpoint of the cannon, rather than embedding it in the clay, right? Normally you'd make clay this thick, then you would make a nice edge, then you would pour your rubber on top. Okay, here's my rubber. I'd pour the rubber on top, then I would flip it over, dig out all the clay, and then pour the second layer of rubber. Now, the thing that happened... Oh, and if you haven't seen Venomold and what I'm talking about here, there is also a video in my review playlist that talks about Venomold. I'm going to try not to put links to all of these videos all the time because I need to trim sometime in the video making world here. So, but I don't think it'd be hard for you to find. And of course, you could always just search on YouTube, TerranScapes and Venomold. It's a heatable, reusable mold making material. Heated it, poured it until it was the bottom half, made a little seal, made the top, flipped it over, peeled this off to get ready to pour the second half of the rubber. This is Rioflex 20, by the way. And lo and behold, what happened? Well, the Venomold was just hot enough to ruin the cannon. Now, I don't know what my depth of field is going to be for acceptable viewing, so I'm going to play with this, but I am not adjusting the focus. So hopefully you can see the damage there. And sure enough, of course, me being me, I went and I did that with all three, right? So here's the mold box for the volley gun. And sure enough, right? So I made my box, mounted it, filled it with Venomold, turned it over. Filled it with Venomold, release agent, fill the rest of it with Rioflex, turn it over, peel the Venomold out, getting ready to pour the Rioflex in the second half. This is a standard 2-part mold procedure. If you are confused, check out videos on 2-part mold making. It's very straightforward for all these types of molds. Are all the same, basically. But when I got to this point, of course, I noticed that it had melted the top bits of the gun. Can I just say, do you know how much time I spent filling this with Milliput and making nice, clean fills and nice crisp edges and filling in all these spots? Yeah, so that was a pretty big depressing moment. And I'm out of sequence because actually there was another effort before this that was also non-effective, right? So, okay, so the Venomold melted, had to restart over literally because I could not reuse these parts. Just before I did this, however, I thought, wouldn't it be nice to use latex rubber to make the mold, there we go, of the cannon. I brushed on latex rubber. Now, I've been using latex rubber for my Bragdon rock molds, and so I thought, oh, wouldn't that be great? I'll do a brush on mold on this while I'm working on the rock molds, and then it's what you call a glove mold, so you can just kind of like roll out the interior piece. And I thought when I go to cast into it that it will allow me to kind of squidge it and get all the air bubbles out so I'd get a perfect cast. And it's firm enough that it doesn't need any support like a mother mold to hold it. Well, I thought that was going to be an awesome, awesome idea. And when I cast it, it didn't come out right. And I don't know exactly why, but it's all warped. It's, I'm going to try again here. We'll get a little closer. I tried to set the depth of field really deep, but we'll see. But lots of deformations, problems. It was terrible, actually. It was terrible. So I tried it with both. Here's the one that I used for the volley gun. That did not work. And this has got all sorts of problems in it as well. So I peeled off the latex, said screw that, went to the Venomold, ruined the pieces that I had been working on, said screw that, and went out and bought the metal versions of these pieces. These are the out of production original metal casts that GW sold. So here's the Empire gun. Here is the Empire volley gun. And then I have somewhere else I have, oh, and the mortar. All right, so I didn't get the steam cannon. I got the mortar instead. Nice thing about these, no matter what I do, I can't ruin them. So win there. Second of all, I really like them. The nice thing about the cannon, which was interesting to me, is it is the exact same cannon they are currently using. I did not know that. And I figured that they had made some changes in size, right? Most things have gotten larger over time for GW, and the cannon is the exact same cannon. So I thought that was pretty cool. Win there. The volley gun, however, all right, and I'll talk a little bit about this mold in just a second, but you can see the volley gun actually was much smaller in its original size, and because it's a single cast of metal, all of it's already filled. No assembly, no filling gaps, no none of that stuff. So that was nice. So that was a win there. So, knocking lights around. So I said, all right, so let's move forward with the metal pieces, and I'm going to make this work some way, somehow, no matter what. So first thing I had to do was strip them all down because they were painted. You know, of course, you're buying these used on eBay. And I really, really tried to super clean them. I put them in my ultrasonic cleaner with Simple Green, take them out, scrub them down, put them back in, run the ultrasonic, leave them overnight, take them out, scrub them down, toothpick them, toothbrush it, everything I got. And I got them pretty clean. There's still, you can see inside there, there's still a little paint that I couldn't quite get out of there. But in general, though, really, really happy with how clean they came. And I figure you might as well, right? Because you're going to make it your master. You want to get all that paint out because it's obscuring detail. So I went through, cleaned all of these bits, and of course, the carriage for the cannon and the carriage for the volley gun have wheels, right? So I was like, all right, we're going to cast them all up, even though, right, how BA is that going to look, right? You know, coming out of there, or maybe better yet, right, the volley gun, okay? But I was like, forget it. You know what? I'm going to cast everything. It's good practice for me. I need to learn how to cast small details, and it's a chance for me to see if I can cast some very small pieces without using a pressure chamber, since that's something I've been considering buying for quite some time. So I took the carriage for the volley gun, and what I did is I mounted it in clay, all right? So you have to imagine this is the clay, okay, instead of this. And what I did is I made a little cutout and mounted it on the cutout, not in the mold box, all right? Not in the mold box, but on its own separate base so that I could make a super clean edge all around it with the clay to try to control mold lines. A lot of times, this is what it would look like, right? It's embedded in the clay. You push your clay in. You've got this gap, right, where you're going to fill. And now you're trying to make the edge in there. And I've always found that to be a challenge because getting a tool into that spot and making sure it's nice and clean and, you know, I didn't like it. So I was like, let's really go for the proper cast as best as I can. So what I did is I did that. I went around. I made a super clean edge. That took me a while. And then I laid in the sprues. And what I did for the sprues, which are, you know, the venting. Okay, so you got a picture here, right? I'm going to fill this from this side into the cavity, all right? In fact, I think at this point, let's take it out. So here we go. All right. So this is what I want the mold to look like, right? I want to have places where the air can escape from some of these areas that are going to be hard to fill, right? The tips here, the tip here. Again, that's all part of me trying to see, can I cast it without a pressure chamber? And that means getting all of the bubbles out. So what I used for my vent sprues is I used styrene tube. I can't remember the size of this. It's like 1/8 inch maybe or something like that. I laid that into the clay. Then I made my keys, press, right? and then I poured the layer of rubber, which would have been this side, all right, and then I flip it over and I pull the clay out, and this piece would still be in there at this point. It would look like this, okay? And then I pour the second layer of rubber, then I can peel it apart and I can pull out the master and I can pull out the sprues. Sorry if you understand all of this two-part casting stuff and you're bored. I just want to make sure everybody understands, and I'm sure there are some people new to my channel who are new to this kind of mold making, and I just want to give you an overview of it. Hopefully that all made sense. So that was the process I went through with all of the components. I did every single component for all of these models. I wanted also to try something new with the keys. And now it's probably best to take a look at the volley gun, because there's several challenges with the volley gun that needed to be addressed. So first, before I go into the challenges, you'll notice that the keys, okay, you press that into the clay with a little pen or something, and then later, right, see how nice that'll line up? I really, really, really wanted to have great keys, partly because this is a softer rubber. Rioflex 20 is what I had on hand, and partly because, again, I'm going for 0 parting lines. I want these to be quality casts, better than I've ever done before. Lots and lots of keys to hold that together. So I did keys in both directions. I did keys, you notice there's some coming out and there's some going in. A little bit of an experiment there. The other that's a challenge with this particular piece, and I'm going to take it out now so you can see. I haven't even demolded this yet. All right. So here's, get out of there. Okay. The volley gun has these little tiny tips here. All right, little tiny tips. These are like little heads of dragons, right? These little dragon ears. And because I'm going to be filling it, all right, from this direction, those are going to definitely capture an air bubble. So I needed to vent them. But they are higher, okay, than what would normally be my parting line, where normally you would make your parting line somewhere down the middle. So this is actually how I sculpted the clay, because this was the clay layer. So I sculpted the clay with a valley, a trough, to come up to the ear tips, and then I ran the sprue right touching to the ear tip to the end, and that's how you can see it here. So the goal is, can I get even these little tiny tips to degas properly when I cast into it? The other thing that's interesting about this is the face has a little demon smiling thing, and I didn't want the parting line to go across that either. So what I did, let's see if I can put it back in here real quick, give you a sense. Close enough. If you notice, I actually brought the parting line as a round lip up over the face, so that when I pull it out, right, the parting line will actually go over it, and if there's a problem, I'm not going to have to damage the face to clean it up. So that was something new that I wanted to try as well. So lots and lots of venting work to get these pieces to where I wanted them to be. And I learned something new, and I can't remember where, but man, it's an awesome idea. All right, so here's my mold box. Now picture, all right, use your imagination, right? It's in this kind of foam core surrounding, all right? Before you remove the foam core, this might have been from Smooth On actually, I'm not sure, one of their videos. Before you remove the foam core, peel this off here. Let's get in there and see. All right. I won't need to do this when I cast, but just to show you. Get. Okay. Before I remove it from the mold box, cut in some keys and pour some resin to make the backing for the two-part mold. Because what you do is you have your spout here, your fill spout. Then you strap this together with tape or rubber bands to hold that together. And by doing the resin backing, you have an automatic back for each side that's perfectly sized, that's strong, and is keyed to stay in place. awesome, awesome idea. So I did that for all of the molds because it's just a win-win. There's no way that could be bad. And for the molds that I've started working on, I actually have just sanded down those sharp edges, and you just end up with such a nice, look at that. How nice is that for a backing for a 2-part mold? All right, so let's take a look at the cast that I've actually done so far. So having gone through all of that process, it was time to start to cast, and I really wanted to start casting with something along the easier end of the spectrum, partly because, let's see how the simple ones go, and partly because the resin that I have on hand is a very fast setting resin. So that makes it a bit of a trick to, to get it to degas if it's a complicated mold, because the resin starts to get thick really, really quickly. Now down the road, I'll get a slower curing resin, but at the moment that's what I had. So I tried to cast basically just 2 things. Okay, so here's one. So I wanted to cast the wheels, and you can see from the wheel mold that what I did is I created, 2 pour spouts. One will really act as a vent, and then I vented it from the bottom, and then I connected them at the bottom here. And I thought that would be a good sort of test. Can I get the bottom wheels to fill properly when I am pouring into it? And when I, let's see here, oh, look at that, we can leave those right there. When I did that pour, this is pretty much what I ended up with. I ended up with, and as a quick, I don't know what happened, but little bubbles in the rubber formed at all of the hubs. I don't know. So the hubs end up with a little bubble in them, but that's fine. I'll just drill that out if I'm going to mount it. What I got is I got 4 good, actually, I guess it would look like this. Doesn't really matter, does it? Does it matter? It doesn't matter. Anyway, something like that. I got 3 good casts and 1 that didn't quite fill properly. Considering the plastic that I was using and its setting time, I'll take that as not bad, actually. And also, it made me think that I might need to open up the vents just a little bit more at the connection points, as that is sort of a bottleneck for some of them, and try it again. Because, actually, the vents did fill with resin. Oh gosh, I got so much stuff, and it's been so long since I worked on this. You'll have to, we're all going to go through this together here. But in any case, I felt like that was not a bad test. That's fixable. And then what I did is I cast the cannon. Now the cannon is a much more straightforward piece to cast, so I thought that would be a good test. And in particular, I just wanted to make sure that the little nubbins, these are little fish on top, filled on their own. They should fill fine and not need venting, but I thought, why not anyway? But I did add vents at the cannon carriage, holder, so that I could make sure that those didn't end up with bubbles as well. So the cast I got out of that look like this, and it's not bad. However, one of the things I was doing when I filled it is I was a little worried about bubbles. And sometimes what you'll do with a soft mold, and you'll see Smooth On do this sometimes, is you can give it a little squeeze there to kind of help encourage bubbles to come out of the cast. And because the resin sets up so fast, when I was doing a little squidging, I actually compressed the barrel just a little bit, and it's just a little tipped over. Now look, it's usable. I mean, I'm not gonna complain, and I know why. I'm pretty sure. But if you look, and again, I don't know if that's quite going to be in focus. I might try a little post zoom. We'll see. Anyway, it's just a little off compared to the original, but I'm okay with that. And the seam lines are not quite Not quite as nice as I would have liked, but that might also be part of my distorting it. And actually, for a comparison, we can take a look at the wheels, which didn't suffer that. And actually, they have, noticeable seam lines as well. So I think what I'm going to take away from this as my start on this process is that I don't have to be quite so persnickety about the lining of it with the clay to get a super clean edge, as it looks like no matter what, I'm going to end up with a little bit of a seam line, and better to just save a little time there, and it's going to take just about the same amount of time to clean it off either way. So that will save me a little bit in the mold making time, and use a thinner resin to get longer time to fill, and open up some of the vents just a little bit, and I should be good to go. So those are the only two that I've cast at this point, mainly because I haven't gotten any other resin, and I've been so busy with other things, I haven't had a chance to come back to it. But, there's plenty of practice to be had here, and, some of these are going to be very interesting to see how they fill. On this one in particular here, I opened a vent on this side, but I did not open it on this side, and I really want to see if this side will be dirty fingernail. I want to see if this will, open itself, fill itself easily without adding another vent. It's just going to teach me something about venting for the molds in general. And the last thing that I learned about doing this is that I should have put in a more formal pour spout in the top when I made the mold. Typically, when you see Smooth On, I watch all of their videos. I watch all of the Brick and Yard videos. I watch a lot of mold making videos. And what Smooth On does is they actually build a clay spout into it as part of the sprue. And so that then when you fill it, right, you end up with a nice big cone to pour into the mold with. And I did not do that because I thought, well, I'm just going to build a little clay, just a little clay spout at the top, and I'll just pour into the clay spout. Well, that's not easy. It's a pain, and it works, but it's not simple, and I wish I had done that. So I may go back in actually and hand cut in a much larger pour spout on some of these, but some of these I just don't have the room to. I have to be careful because, obviously this is a very short transition here, whereas a piece like this, which is this piece actually, let's take a look at the Canon. The Canon, I can open it up a little bit, and I actually did start to do that. So that gives you a look at the mold making that I have done for this, and let's go wrap it up. So that gives you a look at what has happened in the now known as the Fortified Sorcerer study. And, that mold making took me a long time. And with those setbacks, it really just sort of ground me to a halt. And then the time that I normally spend on that is, sort of in the evening. And sometimes I don't feel like it because I've already done a lot of terrain work, right? But I've replaced it actually with a new activity that's related to it, and that is learning how to do quality perspective drawings. Well, quality, that's the goal. Let's just say learn how to do perspective drawings. And part of that is preparation for another project coming up, where I realize the project's complexity requires me to do more complex preparation for it. And it made me think about this little Sorcerer study project, and the fact that part of the struggle I had, which is why this is great practice, so I do need to get back to it, but part of the problem I had with doing the addition to the tavern building, which has been the main focus up until this point, is that I didn't really have a good plan of what was happening to it. I was just sort of willy-nilly cobbling pieces together, and that has worked fine for me in the past. But as I get more and more detailed and I add more and more elements, I begin to lose sight of what it's supposed to look like, and that is causing me problems, right? The windows were out of proportion or, you know, these sorts of things that I should be able to get a better handle on. So that has been my major motivation now, is to learn how to draft a good perspective drawing so that I can use that as a more firm guide going forward on a more complicated project. That's its own learning, but you know, it never stops, right? Well, for video editing, lighting, you know, sound, mold making, what's next? Well, now it's perspective drawing. I don't know. So I've been working really hard on trying to squeeze that in when I can and do drawings, and you know, I've got a couple instructional books and I've been looking at stuff online, and it's getting better. It's getting better. I'm learning, and it's geometry, and I love geometry, but I am not going to be working on that project again until I can do a good series of drawings on it that include the layout of the buildings. I mean, which direction are they facing? Where are the bridges? I have this dim image in my mind, but that's not a good idea. I need to have a real vision of it with distances. How big are the bridges going to be? What kind of a drawbridge is it? You know, how big should this platform be? Where should the guns be pointing? How many cannons should there be? You know, so what you will see from me next on this project when I get to it is going to be a series of drawings that are going to show exactly what I want to do, and that will then be used as the guide going forward for the actual construction. And I think it's going to save me time, because the drawings themselves will take a lot of time, but if they're done properly, they include all the measurements and all the spacing and all of that. So then it's just building to the design, which has already been thought out, laid out, and more importantly, looked at and corrected visually on paper, rather than me thinking, I should probably rip those windows off. Can I just say those windows on the side of that will never stop bugging me? I will never do them like that again. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go back and take a look and you'll see when I cry. Lessons learned, lessons learned. So anyway, that has been where my focus has been. I am not prepared to share with you my insights on perspective drawing because I have not gotten them down firm enough, but that will probably be another element of the kinds of videos that I show you, because it's been a very interesting thing for me to learn. And I think it's something probably that more people should consider, both as, you know, sort of a hobby element all unto itself, but also as a way of building better, more complicated terrain elements. So thank you once again for joining me. Always say it, and I always mean it. It's if you didn't come and watch, it would just be me talking into a piece of glass. So it takes all of us to make this a channel, and I appreciate your participation in that. So stay tuned to the channel, because I have lots of content to keep coming out with, and I hope some of it will be interesting to you. I have a feeling some of it will. So until then, I will be back soon with another TerranScapes video.